All right, welcome back, everyone. I got an amazing guest on today. So I met him through social media. He's part of the One Rental at a Time community. So welcome, Chris. And he actually goes by Invest LYH on social media. But welcome, man.
How you doing?
Good, good. Yeah, so you reached out, you kind of want to talk about your portfolio a little bit. You heard all the mistakes I made, and you're kind of going through maybe similar struggles like that. So why don't you fill my audience in about like your portfolio and your real estate journey?
Sure. The original time that I reached out, I was listening to Dion, and he had mentioned to another commenter that you had grown pretty quickly, and I thought that that was something that maybe that had happened to us in 2023. We went from one rental to 10, and it was across three buildings, four buildings, excuse me. We acquired two in 2023, and our primary we turned into a rental. So we kind of shifted to a duplex. Our primary became a rental. So we had the second rental underneath us, and then we bought a 6 unit. And I was having some issues with stabilization and being able to kind of see that timeline. And I think when Dion had said that to you, I just reached out and that's when I asked you a couple questions. I actually still have my notebook. I think it's in the other room, but it has it has 5 months. That was your timeline that you said to me, where it was like once you kind of got it to stabilization. And I'll tell you, we flipped two of them these past 3, 4 weeks. And once we hit that point at the end of this month, it will be exactly 5 months as you had suggested. So I appreciate that. Thank you. And it's just interesting to hear that from other investors because you as investors sometimes we going through it is tough and being able to reach out to somebody who is either going through it with you or has already gone through it. It's very helpful to understand that we can get through this as well. And there's a saying, my brother-in-law, he's an author, and he always says to me, the only way out is through. And it's tough sometimes when you're going through it because you just want to be out. But sometimes the only thing to do is wait. And the only way out is to get through it. And it's endearing to hear this, especially from you and from the one rental at a time community. There's so many of us out there that, we may not have the portfolio of Matt or Mike, but we we understand the struggles that a lot of them went through when there was no YouTube, and we're able to reach out. And I'm out in Lynchburg, Virginia, which is literally on the other side of the world, and talk to you about it and figure this stuff out and allow us to get through. Um, so in terms of like my story, because you did say, tell you a little bit about my story. I was a marketing person for a mortgage company 2014, 2013, 14-ish. I'd have to look. I don't remember the exact year. Um, but our we designed video email communications. We were the first ones to do it in our state. And our team was very big. We probably did about 50 or 60 million a month in terms of loan volume. And we it was a 13-member team. I think we had six LOs and the rest were processors. And then they brought me on board to do some um, we designed marketing packages with our real estate agents and our loan officers. And with that, we had a lot of data coming in. And I was just going through this data, and I've always taken a liking to economics. And at one point, I just remember telling my wife, I'm like, I'm gonna have to go back to school. I got to figure a lot of this stuff out in terms of the math, in terms of the statistics. So I took a class at night, and it was in the summer, I remember, because it was a 5 week class, and I would work from 7:30 to 4-ish, something like that, go to school from 5 to 9. And I would go the full week and I wouldn't even see my wife. And I was like, I don't even know who you are anymore. So, but yeah, it's funny. So just one day I was sitting there and I was like, you know what? If we do this, I'm gonna have to make the break. I am, I was I was lucky enough in my life to serve in the military and not have to go to the desert, as we call it. My stations were all in the U.S. and my units were part of the envelope of security for this president. So we only went to South America based on our my duty station, which I'm very grateful. That was um, just something that happened in my life. I count my blessings every day that I did not have to step foot on Middle Eastern soil and go into a hot zone. Thank God. However, because of that, I was able to use the GI Bill to help my education and fund it. So talked to my wife about it. We realized that I needed to figure out I need to increase my math skills and increase my statistical skills quickly because I was in my 30s at the time. And I decided we're going to cut off work. We were going to move our entire family from Arizona. We went up to Colorado. I earned a degree in economics up there. While I was there, I needed to keep this forward momentum. I knew that a bachelor's degree would not do it. I needed a terminal degree. So I started looking. I think we traveled to about 9 different schools throughout the US. And I was able to get into Florida State. I went there. I have a terminal degree from Florida State in applied economics. And basically what a terminal degree is it means there's no additional level. So the highest you can go in applied economics is a master's. Applied is a little different than a PhD because or I'm sorry, than traditional economics because you're taking models that are in existence and you're able to perform those and be able to read through those and identify um, what the components of the model are, excuse me. In traditional PhD programs for economics, what you do is you take those and you apply those to a theory. And then that's where you write your dissertation and you'll figure out, well, this worked in this segment. Can it work in this segment? And then you'll find that data and you'll generally you have like committee members that will be able to walk you through it and say, well, we're kind of finding something here, but not here. So we have to look here to make sure that we add to the body of academic work. And um, I say all that because with my economics degree, I'm going back right now for business and management and leadership. And my research now focuses on uniqueness of individuals. And I believe that the market is a place where people can come together and agree on mutual understanding of future outcomes. So, for example, if I come to the market with a pen and you need to write something, I can sell you this pen. You are going to agree to purchase this pen because you think that your writing is going to make you better off. Whereas my idea about this pen is that I have 100 of them, so I can part with one, even though because I have 99 more. So my day will be better off as well. Now, the uniqueness aspect of this comes in when people have different ideas of management. It was funny the other day at our Lynchburg meetup, somebody was said, "What is the number one rule for investing from Warren Buffett?" And I said really loudly, "Be Warren Buffett." And, and the reason why I say that is because you could take all of Warren Buffett's training, apply it to somebody else, and they could be middle management. They could even be poor because they are not Warren Buffett. They are not his unique makeup of understanding of the market. He has a mindset that allows him to understand how capital is used in his particular scope to be able to make things profitable. And that's a very tough thing for people to understand because it in business school, a lot of times we take the concepts that we have and we say, can we find this magic concept? And in reality, the magic is in the individual. It is not in the concepts. The concepts are there to accentuate who we are as individuals. We are all unique. And this is getting a little philosophical, and I apologize for that. But my research is about how we can be unique in our market and provide for. It's not like we're providing for everybody around us in terms of like you have bread to eat, you have water to drink, but we are providing something that will allow us to have that community that sometimes we forget about in just the everyday world of transactions. So that's me now. I go to school. After I graduated from Florida State, we moved to Texas. So that's 4 states now that I've been in: Arizona, Colorado, Florida, and Texas. And we lived there for about 2 years. And I was working as an analyst for a job, well, a data scientist, but I was more of an analyst than a data scientist. And I worked there for about a year and a half. My wife wanted to open a cookie shop, so we opened a cookie shop, which is still there in Frisco, and we lived there for about 2 years. We realized that that was not for us. We, I think we didn't realize until later on that we really enjoy a college town. So we decided to start looking. I actually picked Virginia out of I had a possible position at Kansas State, and they flew me up there. They showed me Manhattan, and it was interesting. Um, and my sister lives in Richmond at that point in my life. During my senior year at Colorado State, 2018, I lost my mom. Rachel lost her dad. And then the next year, we lost her mom. And then my dad passed away in 2022, I think. But he had been sick for a while. So we just family became a little bit more of a priority for us. And so I actually took a lot less money to move to Lynchburg as opposed to go to Manhattan, because my sister is here and Rachel's brother was down in Raleigh. And Raleigh's about 2 hours away from Lynchburg, and my sister's over in Richmond, so about 2 hours away. So no pop-ins. That was one of our criteria. We don't want people just pop in. Um, but we
Let me
kind of
stop you right there real
sure,
quick.
go ahead.
So, you mentioned the passing. I'm sorry to hear that. But was
Mhm.
that kind of what put you on this path maybe to financial freedom as far as the turning point for you? Because there's always that moment, seems like, where
Yeah.
it hits someone and it flips the switch for them and they realize, like you're saying, maybe it's the time you have left or it's so precious, and that's what kind of turned it on for you. Is that kind of what happened?
I'm sure it played a role, but we had already made the decision that I was going to go back to acquire certain skill level to move into it. I used to want to work at a tech company. Um, And then I just got a really good offer from a company. It was significantly higher than any of my peers at my graduation, and I could not refuse it. And so I took the job at the insurance company doing that. And but I think part of the move back to the eastern side, because we love the West. We lived in Arizona for 8 years. We loved it out there. We went when we were out in Vegas. We really missed the West. Um, and it's different because when we were out in Vegas in February, it was us now without a place that we call home, because we don't have a home now. Like even as you grow older, you always have a home with your folks. Well, ours are gone now. So like it's odd sometimes when we go back to New England because it's not the same. I'm not going to my dad's house. We're not going to her parents' house. So it's different, but I do think that it did play a role. Because you read the book, I got it around here somewhere. Rich Dad Poor Dad, I got it over here, I think. Um, and you kind of okay, well, there's a couple ways that you can achieve that um, level of non W-2 related income. And so businesses are one, other performing assets are another. And I think that I do remember that when we were getting ready to do our cookie shop, I was thinking about my mom, and my dad was still around, and I used to talk to him about it a lot. And it was, I think, some part of it could be like, you know what, we're going to hit this income level. We're going to pull my dad out. He's going to come live with us. At one point, we wanted her mom to come live with us, but she was having some issues. Um, so I mean, I think it played a role. I do. It I have always been the type of person that wants to get out and explore things. So I I don't know if we're ever going to live anywhere for more than a decade, if I'm being honest. When I was young, we moved from New England to Florida for about 3 or 4 years. Then we moved back, and I was like, we need to move again. Um, so I always kind of gravitated away because I could always go back. And I think that when I realized, I remember my mom could not come out to Colorado, and she talked about how beautiful it was. She remembered reading about it in books. Because my mom was pretty old, and I was like so upset that I couldn't bring her out there. And at that point, I'm a student. I'm not even working. So we I don't even know how we survived those few years, if I'm being honest, because we flew back a couple times to see both of our sets of parents as they went through some of their health troubles. We did it somehow, and it was just, I remember digging up a part of the oval, which is the main drag for Colorado State, the old campus, and putting it in a jar and flying back home with it and giving it to her and telling her that I know that I can't bring you out to Colorado, but I can bring Colorado to you. And I gave it to her, and she sat with it until the day she passed. Which I do think this. Let me say this, because my wife's parents died in their 60s, and we were like, we cannot let that happen. So we did sit down, like we have our goals. They're over here somewhere in one of these notebooks. We write them out every year. And the thing is about our goals, we don't give them a 1 year timeline. We just give them like, this is what we want to accomplish. And then we just kind of let it sit. Because I remember hearing that we often do not give ourselves enough time on certain goals, and we underestimate what we can do in 1 year, or I'm sorry, overestimate what we can do in 1 year and underestimate what we can do in 10 years. And it hasn't even been 10 years since I went back to school. And I mean, we've accomplished so much. We started a few businesses, but we started a brick and mortar business that, I mean, our revenue was on track to hit $250,000 for selling $4 cookies. That's crazy.
Yeah.
And every month that we had that business, we were in the black. We we sold that business, um, and then now we have I mean, not a significant portfolio, but it's 10 units. Um, it generates pretty good income in terms of profitability. Well, it will, I should say, once our 6 unit is stabilized. But we
No,
were able to
yeah.
do a lot of this without going bankrupt, which I know like the lumberjack talks about how he was on the brink of bankruptcy before, and we have never had papers in our hand of bankruptcy. But man, it has kept me up at night.
Yeah, I think what we've all been there, and it's kind of that awkward phase like that you're
Mhm.
talking about. It's kind of in the beginning, the first few properties are, they're kind of hands off. They kind of trick you a little bit, and then you scale, and then like you're saying, there's always something that we have to pivot or deal with. And like right now, like you reached out earlier, and it was like insurance, right? You have the
Yeah.
insurance things
Yep.
going on. And like for me, I had vacancies or whatnot. And it's always something, right? And it's all, and I think, when you get, like you said, when you get to Zuber or Lumberjacks level, they have so many properties already that it doesn't affect them, or they don't feel it as much. But for
Right,
us, we're kind of right in that kind of awkward phase where it's, we have a decent sized portfolio where, yeah, if everything is going well, it's generating revenue, but at the same
right,
time it's those things that we're still trying to stabilize or account for, and they pop up. And I think that's that tricky part. And I don't know if for you, but for me, it definitely made me realize that I don't want to get to Lumberjacks or Zuber's
right.
portfolio size. Also, I like the Dion and the Coach Carson, that small and mighty kind of lazy investor mindset. So where are you now? Or do you think you want to get to that big portfolio like Lumberjack and Zuber, or you thinking more like that small and mighty kind of mindset?
I think I'm a middle, kind of in the middle. So it's funny you mentioned Coach Carson because my wife just got his book. So she graduated in May. We both work at a higher education institution, and she went through a program to earn her master's, and she did a ton of reading for that. And when she finished it, she was like, "I don't know what to do now." And she's like, I think I'm going to make a goal and I'm going to make a list of certain things that I want to do. And one of them was she wants to read more nonfiction books. So she's like, we saw Coach Carson in Vegas, and she's like, I really like what he had to say. So she's reading through his book right now. And I do agree that I think that you can remain small and be very efficient and very profitable. That being said, I think this 6 unit has taught me that vacancy, because we have a single family home that we're having some issues with tenants on as well. And um, if the tenant there does not pay, that's 100% vacant. Whereas in this 6 unit, we had two evictions. So we had four other people paying. So it helps kind of smooth those times over rather than like binary pay, no pay. So I think that I still want to focus on small multi-unit, but if I could have three or four of those instead of 30 or 40, I'd be perfectly fine. If
Yeah.
they run well, if the buildings are properly maintained, I think that those things can just well, here's the other thing too. Because one thing I didn't really get to is my 6 unit that I did get, I got 30-year debt owner financing. That helps
Yeah.
because the guy, I know he was selling two, and I was hoping to buy both. I bought the one across the street, he sold to another individual, and that individual has since reached out to me and said, "Hey, can you buy it?" And I was like, "I don't have the money right now because this is when I'm going through insurance." And I'm like, "Well, how would I even insure it?" But I did say, "Would you finance it?" And he said, "I could let you assume the note that I got." And I was like, "All right, what'd you get?" 7 year with a balloon. And I'm like, "That's perfectly fine, but I'd rather take 30-year, no balloon, fully amortized, low rate." Because with that debt, it allows me to have that rental growth possibility, which growth is slowing a little bit. And I, I personally, I don't think there's anything wrong with that. I think it grew pretty quick the last few
Yeah.
years. Um, but if I could have a few more buildings like that, I'd be perfectly fine with that. I would definitely be small and mighty.
No, I think that's what's great about this community too, is, Zuber, Lumberjack, Dion, Millennial Mike, Coach Carson, Brian Adams, they all have their little niche, right? And
Mhm.
all you're really doing is kind of taking bits and pieces of each one. So even like, Lumberjack, he likes the small multis, which is, I think that, like you're saying, that's going to be a great space to be in. At the same time, though, I think, not that Zuber hasn't scaled or grown, but he also talks about how his single families, the tenants stay a lot longer than
Right.
the multifamilies. So it's just having that mixture and that blend of different types of properties, but also at the same time, if you did get these huge apartments, now you're almost like having to build a team too. So it's
Yes.
also kind of where how big you want to get, but definitely each one kind of has their little niches, and that's great for this community because everyone kind of follows which one they like and bits and pieces. But yeah, I love. So you have 10 units, right, or 10 doors right now, right?
Yeah,
And
across 4 buildings. Yeah.
so what would you say, and you kind of touched on it, you scaled quickly. Like what would be like maybe your advice for anyone starting or thinking that this is just easy and they can if they have the capital just to go out and buy properties.
I would say do like Zuber says, do your homework. I do think one thing that Zuber really has taught me is the one metric that matters to me, and that is cash on cash return. I think some out there look at appreciation as a possible play, and there's nothing wrong with that. I just I cannot bet on that right now. I need to make sure my bills are paid with a little bit of margin. It's exactly like doing a cookie shop. Cookies were a little different in that it cost us about 75 cents to $1.25 to produce, and we sold them for about $4. The only thing is I could not tell you how many customers would come in in a day, every day. In real estate, we know what our revenue is going to be because we can look at Zillow, we can look at Redfin, we can use Rentometer, and we can find our area average rent, which is our revenue. If I can identify what my revenue is at that point, then I can just reverse my math problem and figure out what my margin or my profit is. And that key of cash on cash return is the entire reason why I have Invest LIH. It's the entire reason why my portfolio grew the way that it did. The only way I could do that is by knowing the Lynchburg market. If I did not know what the rental rate was in different areas, and my spreadsheet is huge. It's got I have my rents on it. It has neighborhoods, notes, right? You always got to put in notes like I drove by and there's a car on blocks in the front. I'm not sure if I want that property because you have to clear it. But you have to know that. You have to know a little bit about price per square foot because then you can kind of comp your offer. Um, so I would say know your market, number one. The other thing, if you're going into it where you're not going to live in it and do like a house hack, um, if you have reserves, but now that I'm doing this, I would say double it. But I know that you're not going to listen to me. So maybe add 5% before you make the offer. Because I'll tell you, when I was doing this last November, I heard a lot of people say double it. And I said, I don't care, I'm going for it. But I mean, and some people you have to go through this to really say, you know what? I really did mess up on this. And I should have listened to that person. I should have doubled it. Because as soon as we purchased it, the first thing that the insurance company says we need a new roof. We had slate roofs from like 100 years ago and the way it's built where it's a large home that was converted into apartments. And then in the back, there's a separate carriage house. So that's 2 roofs I had to buy. I mean, you that is that really drains your reserves quickly. That pops out. I had a water leak. We had to evict people because they weren't paying. They broke into the place, broke every single window, um, left the place trash. I had to get that all taken care of. I finally have a plan. Okay, we're going to get this thing taken care of. My property manager calls me the next day and says, a tree fell on your house. These things can happen. Now, I am a math and statistics guy. I would tell the new investor statistically, I don't think 10 water heaters are going to go out. Could 3 go out? Could 3 go out and your roof need repairs. So there are statistical abnormalities that exist. You just got to kind of measure that risk. And the other thing I would say about this is pull the trigger. As much as I'm saying hold, 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 no. The only way to get to a certain level is you have to pull the trigger on that first one. You have to and I say this as I am developing something that is trying to help mitigate this. You have to go through your lumps. But I'm saying that in the way that you have to understand what you're worth and what you can do, not like I'm not very good at finance, so I need to figure out what the tricks are with finance. You can partner with somebody who can do that. What you can't partner with is somebody who understands your building that you just purchased and all those problems that I just explained because they don't know that building. So there are some things that you will have to go through just to kind of become a better a better judge on what you're going through in your market. Like Lumberjack talks a lot about how he goes into places and completely rehabs them. Well, the reason why he does that is because his first 4 or 5, he probably had these issues, and he's like, something's not going on with these water heaters. We got to replace them all as soon as we buy them. And then that just cascaded to the point where he was like, we're just going to do everything. And then we're going to keep it for 10 years and it's going to be perfectly fine. But he still shares things today where it's like, the foundation here was odd. It's a 110-year-old piece of oak. I had to change it. That's something that you will not know until you get to it.
Yeah. I think what I want to stay right here about is, you talk about economics and data and numbers. And I see a lot of people, I think, you're touching on what prevents people from starting or they got to just kind of pull the trigger. It's that analysis paralysis phase. And
Yes.
you kind of touched on it already. You have this spreadsheet of all this information. Do you think, as being as knowledgeable as you are in economics and data and number, that kind of makes it a struggle for you a little bit to pull that trigger that first time, or looking at the information?
It can. I don't think for me particularly, and again, this kind of comes back to the uniqueness of the individual. For me, I think it's a puzzle. I think that every property can be a good deal. We just need to figure out how to do it. And for some people, it's a great deal because they have it paid off. They could rent it for $300 and they're earning X amount. But somebody else could come in and say, well, it's going to cost me $700 to run this. I can't get 1,000 for it. It's not going to be a good deal. And that's where watching certain people and being able to develop an understanding of what financing options are out there would help. That's aside. For some people, I can understand where they get a little nervous about these kinds of things. I would say time is your friend, even if you're in your mid life. Timing is still going to be your friend. I think Dion says that you're going to be around for 10 years in 10 years, so act like it.
Yeah.
That is true. And look, from my perspective, I do teach macroeconomics, and the macro view, prices are going up. Are we going to ride that wave or not? You can ride it with different assets. I just think that the other thing that's going up is the population in this country. Now, our birth rates may not be going up, but the population is increasing. Is the supply of homes increasing at the same rate? And if it's not, I'd rather have an asset for 10 years that the supply is limited, where the demand is continuously going up incrementally over years. So I am a little odd. I'm a little unique, I guess I would say, in that that's what I look at. And if we can get that marginal cash flow and then compound that over 10 years, And then at the 10-year mark, I could either exit and use that appreciation, which I don't count on, but I must, my, coming back to statistics, I believe the statistical um, knowledge shows me that it will be there. Might not be, and that's why I count on the cash flow because it might not be. But if you look at a statistical method of like a 95% confidence interval, I assume it's going to be in that interval at some point. I don't think we're going to see another crash. I don't think that we're going to see, we may have relatively stagnant prices over the next few years, but eventually it'll pick up again. Because the thing is, I just read this article the other day about supply issues in California and Texas. People are not building, and people are moving here every day. That is, I teach a macro econ 101 course. That is macro econ 101. Demand is increasing, which is shifting the curve, which is causing the equilibrium price to increase.
Yeah, I think what it is too, and actually I have like a finance and accounting degree, and I've never used it from college, but I remember some of the econ classes, and one thing I always remember is one of the professors, it was always about, it is data, it's a lot of numbers, but a lot of times it's also like psychology, just understanding people and how they react. Like you're saying, different areas where you live, you're not going to open up a cookie store in this particular market, maybe because, they don't eat cookies, but it's how people act, right?
Right,
And same thing, like housing. It's everyone needs a shelter, but same thing, like Zuber always talks about, the builders they're not stupid. They're not gonna
right.
oversupply the market because they want to make a profit. They're running a business. And it's kind of, that's the way I look at it too. And it's kind of like, if you understand how people are going to respond or do things, it's very helpful in understanding how the market's going to react. And even just understanding your market, like you're saying, you're looking at data of you drive by a certain house, what cars might be parked outside, or what riffraff is going on, and right, so that's just how people are behaving, and that's going to help you evaluate that market. So I think that's super helpful. I also kind of want to touch on too is, so what is the, I guess, vision of your YouTube channel and your
Sure.
economics? Because you have all this great information on Twitter, or X, you want to call it now, and YouTube. And yeah, so what is the vision behind that?
Well, I think that it'll kind of go back into the comment that you just made as well about the builders and about people. The builders are not supplying right now because they understand that in '05 they did provide the supply. And as soon as it hit, they all got burned. So what they're doing is they're like, we're only building 3 homes because we have 200 contract. And when it comes to people, you were talking about like people having the data and then um, not pulling the trigger. And I think this is where the YouTube channel kind of ties in. I think there is a lot of what we call common sense out there that sometimes is detrimental to people. And I say that in that people are saying, well, if I buy a rental home, I'm going to have a mortgage that I owe. Let's say it's $1,000 a month. And I only earn, let's say, $4,000 a month. That's a quarter of my earnings that I will have to pay. Now, yes, I might have a rental, but I may not have, it may be vacant for 2 months. So now we're saying 2 months, which is $2,000 that you owe, which means you're going to have to decrease your spending for 2 months because you have to pay that mortgage off. The other fear that people have is, well, I might lose my job and I might only make 3,000 when I go back to work. So now it's going to be a third of my payments. Well, the misunderstanding I think that people get is they see those fears as significant possibilities. But what they don't equally see is that the opportunity when they lose the job or when they have no rent, for getting a great tenant in there, let's say at 800, who will stay there for 5 years, that that means you have 5 years of debt pay down and your equity is growing in that point. Like I think that there is a misunderstanding, in economics, we call it misallocation of fear and statistical understanding of certain things and not equal opportunities on the other side. How often have people been unemployed for more than 6 months who are looking, like actively looking? I would say that that's statistically very small. Does it happen? I'm sure. But the likelihood that you are going to remain systemically unemployed and not be able to pay the bills that you have, I don't think that that exists. But we always fear that it will. And one thing that my wife and I do whenever we do talk about our goals and about our future is we say, this is our projected income for the year. And the reason why we do that is because we a lot of times as individuals, we forget that income is something that can be projected as well. We always project our bills, but sometimes we forget to project our income. And I think that with the channel, I try to bring to light some of these things right now. So eventually I will do maybe something more with the channel. Right now my time is divided up by my W-2 employment, my teaching, and my schooling. So those are three items that I have to focus on pretty much every week.
And fighting
Uh,
doomers.
yeah, and fighting doomers. Yeah. And a lot of times what happens is I'm at work and I have my office and then we have this other room that we go to and we have to go in there for meetings. And so I'm in there like 5 minutes early and we're kind of getting some things prepped. And then I just sit down for a few minutes and I'm twiddling away and saying like, what are you talking about?
Yeah.
And I'll tell you, there's some doomers out there. Like one guy said he was going to show up at my house. He never did. And I'm like,
Really?
yeah, I'm like, all right, man. I so a lot of these people online, they say things and they do things, they don't know who I am. And I- they're, they are who they are. But yeah, I remember that guy. I was like, who's this guy?
You know, I like what you talk about too is common sense, right? It's a
Yeah.
lot of it too, and we kind of briefly touched on it, but like real estate, like you're saying, I feel like it's very forgiving. It allows you to make mistakes. If you hold it long enough. I think even Coach Carson, kind of talks about it. It's like, getting the property, and then now you have options, right? Whether it's,
Right.
8% might seem high, but what if rates are at 10%, right? So you have a good deal, right? Or
Right.
or when rates go down, you can refinance or whatnot. So I think getting the right property, this allows you
Yeah.
options. But then the other thing, and maybe you made this mistake, I'm not sure, but for me, I feel like I got caught up with maybe expected rents in the beginning.
Mhm.
So that's another thing too. Like you're talking about how, people have these fears of if they don't have a tenant or they lose their job. If that's something you're really afraid of, I would just be like, hey, just charge a reasonable rent that will get you a quality tenant that's going to stay there for a long time because the rent might be below market rate, but it allows
Mhm.
you that kind of security blanket to kind of get your feet wet, get this thing going. But that's what I feel like. I made some mistakes in the beginning because it was kind of like like you're saying, you do calculations, you run your numbers,
Mhm.
you do research, and you're like, no, I'm supposed to get this much
Right.
amount of rent because this is what my numbers come up with. I'm damn be sure I'm gonna get this rent. And then it goes vacant for a while and a couple months where you might just be better off like, I'm just gonna take this. I mean, you're not gonna go super low, but you're gonna have it where you're
Right.
gonna get a good tenant, get quick a lot of applicants, and then now you can breathe and kind of okay, let's get this one going, get this. And I think that's what really, if I, was talking to a new investor, I say, hey, don't get so caught up in that first, like I have to command this much amount of rent. Get someone in there and
I
yeah,
would absolutely agree with that. That is it. The thing about that is you have to you have to do your calculations. You have to be prepared up front. But sometimes the markets shift. I mean, we just saw one in 2020. Who would have thought rents would have gone up or even prices of homes would have gone up? And the market shifted. And then in 20, I don't remember if it was 22 or 23, rates started shooting up. Again, another shift. Like you do all your stuff on the paper, but you have to be prepared to pivot with that.
Yeah.
And I think that with kind of going back to the like the common sense thing is if you were to lower that rent and you had that tenant in there, even if it's just for 1 year, that's 1 year of breathing room.
Yeah.
Then you can identify, okay, well, I mean, I've done this before where I've gone to open houses down the street. What do they got that I don't have? And then you figure it out and you're like, oh, well, if I do this, if I their paint is gray, my paint is beige. Let me make it gray. Does it help? You never know until you kind of try it. And
Yeah.
um it just I think sometimes we think and this is human nature. We think about the worst possible outcomes without understanding that we have the power to control that outcome to some extent. Like I couldn't charge 2,500 per unit at my 6 unit. It wouldn't, the market would not allow it. But the market average rents there are about, let's say 700. I could probably charge 750. And if it doesn't work out for a month, then I go down to 650. Because now I'm below market. And just like you said, I'm going to get those multiple applicants and I can say, hey, we can either go up or
Yeah. Or I would do like 750, but offer first month free so that
right,
you're not lowering that 750. So like the next year when it comes around, you're already starting at that higher
right.
price point. But what I did want to touch on is what I feel is ego is expensive. So like if you told your friends, yeah, I'm gonna buy this, I'm gonna collect $2,000 a month in rent, then you're like on the hook,
Oh,
like, oh, I gotta get, because if not, they're gonna laugh at me or they're gonna tell you, see how dumb you are for investing in real estate or things like that. So I think that's also the problem I noticed is that people they're sometimes afraid to talk to their friends about it. But
yeah,
then when they do, they don't want to feel like they made a mistake and if their rent's not going to be where they thought it was. So they're kind of like, I know I gotta get this because I told everyone that this is what I'm going to
yeah.
collect. So I think ego is very expensive also. And I think, I try to tell people out there, like, no one cares. Just do what's best for you and be around other people that
That's
are
that's a great point. That's something that I think I'm going to start calling the ego tax,
yeah, I like
right?
that.
Because
Yeah.
because I when people say, "Hey, what are you going to get for renting this?" I'll be like, "Oh, I'm not sure yet. I don't know, maybe 12, 1,500, but I don't want to pay that ego tax." And they're like, "What are you talking
Yeah.
about? I can't tell you what I'm going to pay, what I'm going to charge for rent because if I don't hit it,
Yeah.
how are you
I
going to look at me?"
yeah. I like that. Yeah. Don't steal. You see, now you're stealing my stuff.
No, and the other thing about this, and when I talk about like people being unique, each situation is unique as well. And it's difficult for us to understand that you and I could both have a house on the same street. We could have the same financing. We could have the same property manager. We could have the same style tenant. And one of us could have a significantly more profitable business than the other. It's a situation where we don't necessarily know all the time all the variables that play a role into the outcome. And I think that, so going back to the young or the new investor, I would say new, not young, because there's a lot of people that come to our local group that they're older people, but they understand that there is some power in real estate. And so going back to the new investor, I would say those situational aspects make it very difficult for people to understand because when we see the news and the TV commercials for the real estate, or I'm sorry, for the equities funds, they all give you the fund projections. We don't have that in real estate. We don't have those projections that are like listed saying if you buy on 123 Street, you're guaranteed cash on cash of 10% because Jim, Jane, and Joe all got that last year. Because Jim may have gotten 20, Joe may have only gotten 5, and Jane may have just cleared. And it's difficult for new investors to take that leap because they are not necessarily conditioned, but all we are inundated with based on investment is the expected return. And we don't understand as people that if you don't really put the work into it, your return is, and even if you do put the work into it, sometimes your return will be negative for a while. You know, and the reason why I contacted you is because I've been putting the work into it and I have not been cash flow positive these last few months, but I know I will be at the end. And I think that's where like Coach Carson comes in and says that time component, well, those negatives that we've had these last few months, they're not going to look as negative when we get 10 years out because I have a new roof now for 15 years at least. It's probably going to be a 30-year roof, but I'm not going to have to worry about that ever again.
Yeah, well, I love that. Well, this has been great. We might have to do this again, man. We have to do some
Sure.
regular stuff on the live. We got to get you on the lives, so we can get
You got to
some.
get, yeah, I have to schedule that out. I'm starting class in 2 weeks. Um, I did take a class off. I'm not teaching for this term right now because I had to get this squared away, but the unit that I'm working on. Um, but yeah, I'd be happy to kind of come on and I really think oddly about things. Um, I see a lot of components in different things from different perspectives. It's the ladies that I work with, they're like, you really think weird. And I'm like, I
No,
know.
that's what we need. That's like it's just the same thing with kind of the community that Zuber's built. He's brought in all these different people that have different views. They have Dion and his Dionism, and you have lumberjack. So everyone has same thing. They have their niche, but I think that's the thing, right? There's people like you that are very analytical, the data, economics. We have other people that are a little more on that social media side,
Mhm.
and then we have people that love the spreadsheets, and everyone knows me kind of as like I just wing shit a lot of times. Like that's kind of like my superpower is that I kind of just roll with things and I
Mhm.
let things figure it out. And I think I tell people a lot that's kind of just the first responder mentality. A lot of times is you know
Yes.
we go to incidents and it's never going to go as planned. It's never going to go as the training, and a lot of times you got to just figure it out, and that's kind of what it is. But I do want to ask you though. So, real estate or economics? Like, what is your passion?
Interesting question. I think I'm going to give you an economist answer. On the one hand, I enjoy that real estate will be paying for my life in about 5 years, and I can walk away from a W-2. On the other hand, I will walk away from a W-2, but I'm going to walk right into a teaching role. I don't think that I'm going to become like a full-time professor. So the way for your viewers to understand, when you jump into a professor role, you have to do teaching, but you also have to do publishing. And publishing is odd. You have to go through these things called referee journals. And so you submit a paper that you just worked on for the past year or past 3 months or whatever on a topic. They review it, and that review process can take up to 6 months. In some cases, it can take even longer. So what we call that is a working paper. Then it will get published with revisions, and you have to make those revisions. And if you have to continuously do that to build up your rank in a full-time professorship role, I don't know if I want to go through that. So I might just adjunct for the rest of my life because my life will be paid for by real estate. So I love that. My passion, I would say, is probably more economics because I love the understanding the data and being able to identify areas, because I believe the market is a service-based industry. The only way that this is not an iPhone, but the only way that Steve Jobs made it in life is by providing phones to people who wanted them. He served them even though they didn't even know they wanted it. But he did it to billions of people. So he was able to do that. And I do think that being able to identify that and explain that to people, I think that helps. I mean, um we are meant to kind of help one another. Sometimes we can't help one another unless we are able to take care of ourselves first. And I don't that I so that goes into this whole argument about um, self-interest that happens in capitalistic economies. We talk about self-interest, which the guy Adam Smith, who wrote the book over here, Wealth of Nations, discussed in terms of, well, we do not eat by the benevolence of the butcher. We eat because the butcher is trading with us something that we are trading with him. And the butcher wouldn't trade with us if the butcher was hungry.
Hmm.
And that's it, that. And I will say that is a contention point among economists worldwide: self-interest versus greed. But there is a difference, and I mean there are many papers written on that. But I come down in the field that says self-interest is something that is very good because it allows for us to provide for others a base level of something. For me, it's teaching, and my analyst role, I help pay people. So I provide payments for them. But I can't do that if I don't have a roof or food. I would not be able to do that.
I love that. So where can they find you then? Where can they find you on YouTube and X and everything?
Invest LYH would be the best place. Sometimes I come in through my other stuff. So one other thing that I forgot when I was doing the building our video channels in my company in Tucson, at my home loan company, I had started a company back then to help people develop social media accounts. And one of my accounts is like 200,000 followers or something like that. I never even post on it anymore. I don't do anything on it anymore, but one of my videos went viral on how to tag somebody on a Facebook post.
Oh wow.
This was years ago. This is like in
I need that.
2014 or something. So but yeah, so I have so many accounts that I click on. So if you guys get something from me that from my name, just know it's me too. Most of the time, unless I have stalkers out there that I don't know of, which I might, and they might show up in my house someday.
All right. I love it. And I just thought about this because I used to do it in the beginning. I used to always ask people about superheroes and stuff, who reminds them the most. But I want to start a new one. You're gonna be my first one. I'm gonna ask this
All right.
because Holmes and Hustle's Sierra Smiths gave me so much shit about it. But are you a Crocs fan?
The shoes? I am
Yeah. Are
not
you
a
is
Crocs fan.
no?
Well, here's the thing. It's not that I'm not a Crocs fan. I don't wear them,
All right.
but from an economic standpoint, I love that they fulfill a need that people
See?
use. There's my political answer for the
All
day.
right, all right. Well, you are the first person I've asked that on an interview, so it didn't go as I planned, but it went well enough. But the last part, this was great, and I didn't get to touch on it earlier. And both of us kind of, maybe that's kind of our message, talking about our struggles and scaling too quickly. And you did talk about it as kind of. I always want to remind people it's kind of like that story of I think it was the bulls or the horses or something with the tornado, right? And there's only you can either try to outrun it or you turn around and face it and go through it, and that's going to usually be the
True.
quickest way to get through it, right? It's just kind of facing it and going through it, and that's kind of what you were touching on. I think we've both been through it. I think we are pretty much right on that other end now. We're getting through it, and we're kind of seeing the light a little bit, and yeah, it just, but we're probably gonna have to pivot right after that with something else, right? So,
I know.
but it does take time, and it's fun. And I'm just glad I'm getting to connect with different folks like you, and hopefully we get to meet up in Vegas next year and
Yeah.
sit down and do some more stuff together. But yeah, this was fun, man. I'll put all your links below. Reach
Oh,
out to them. I
thanks.
mean, you're
Very good.
always talking about great stuff on X, and we got to get more people fighting the doomers out there on X, with us and
There are a
Zuko.
lot out there.
Oh, yeah, what they're making money off of it, man. I mean, they're
Yeah.
making money. But yeah, thanks, man. We'll do this again and stick around after I end this and we'll
Sure.
chat. All right, man. Thanks for doing this.